Unfortunately, I'm a bit low on water in here today, so I'm going to have to cook with some beer. Oh dear, what a shame. I'll manage. Lucky I brought my bottle opener. Carrots. Sauerkraut. Well, kind of. My version of sauerkraut. And when I carry it, I put my raw diced potatoes on the bottom because the acid in the sauerkraut stops the potatoes turning colour. Well, what can I tell you that's interesting about cabbage? I do have something interesting about cabbage. So sauerkraut, although it's associated with German food, it's got a version in many, if not all, of the northern European countries. Choucroute in France it's called. Sauerkraut in Germany. Something Kopusti.
Rauginti Kopusti.
I'll do that one later. In Lithuania. At home we call it pickled cabbage. My grandmother used to do a version of it which was with red cabbage. But anyway, it's another ancient prepper food. But here's your interesting snippet. Back in 1750 something, a Royal Navy captain called James Cook, you may have heard of him. Not only was he an excellent captain and explorer, but he was a cartographer, very accomplished cartographer. And he was sent on a mission to sail to
Tahiti
to observe the transit of Venus. He also had secret sealed orders, after he'd done that, to sail south to find this great southern land that was fabled to exist, which he and apparently he came tantalizingly close to finding the southern continent, but instead he decided to sail around New Zealand twice just to be absolutely sure it was a twin landmass. But I digress. What's that got to do with cabbage? Well, back in those days there was a problem with long-range exploration as far as the victualling goes. A disease would rear its head, or a disease would manifest itself, called scurvy. And if you haven't heard of scurvy, symptoms: soft and bleeding gums, you lose your teeth, lethargy, no strength, and eventually death. And it takes about 90 days without vitamin C. So if you went without vitamin C, a source of vitamin C, for around about 90 days you start to show the symptoms, and it's all downhill after that. Well, in 17 odd, they didn't really know what it was all about. They hadn't figured out the mechanism of it. They knew it was something to do with diet, but they didn't know anything about vitamins really, vitamin C, etc. So they were experimenting at the time on all different things. I'm actually getting bitten by a wasp here, look. They were experimenting at the time with all different things, all different beliefs and superstitions. Sailors used to wear talismans to keep it away and things like that before they knew what it was all about. And one of these things, and that's where my battery died, and I discovered that my spare battery was also flat, and I'm going to finish the story if it kills me. So where was I? Well, anyway, the upshot is that diet wasn't terribly good for sailors in those days. actually, since I've got home and re-simulated the stories from the hammock setting. I did a little bit of research, and I found the list of the provisions that they loaded to start this expedition, and it included 6,000 pieces of pork, 4,000 pieces of beef that would have been salted in barrels, also known as junk, salt junk, 9 tons of bread, 5 tons of flour, 3 tons of sauerkraut. Hard to imagine what 3 tons of sauerkraut even looks like. A ton of raisins, sundry quantities of cheese, salt, peas, oil, sugar and oatmeal. Alcohol supplies consisted of 250 barrels of beer, 44 barrels of brandy and 17 barrels of rum. Of course, beer was part of a sailor's wages in those days. But you can see not a lot of stuff there that's got vitamin C in it. There's raisins, perhaps, but they didn't take many of those, not for what turned out to be a 3-year voyage, but they provisioned, I believe, for 18 months at a time. Anyway, the point of the story is there'd already been a memo gone round about the inclusion of sauerkraut and lime in the diet for sailors to stop the scurvy. On that particular expedition, Cook successfully reached one of the destinations without losing a single man, or a single man sick to scurvy, which was a first in its day, and he was a big believer in this cabbage thing. Anyway, the point is that he packed a lot of cabbage for the journey, this sauerkraut, which managed to retain the vitamin C content, or enough, and as a result managed to ward off scurvy. So it's definitely a good prepper food come the apocalypse. Went on a bit this. I've got to end it because YouTube doesn't seem to let me upload movies more than, I think it's 15 minutes long. So anyway, give it a thumbs up if you liked it. I enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Oh, and here's a shot of lunch. Because I lost power, my battery died. I couldn't get, the finale on the food, but I did take a photograph on my cell phone there, so I'm going to include that now. So it was very good. It was delicious. I'm going to do it again. Scout out.